Some people can love you deeply and still feel trapped the moment you get too close. They'll laugh with you, sleep next to you, text you every day, talk about the future. But the second the relationship becomes emotionally real, something changes. Their replies become colder. Their energy shifts. They suddenly need space. Conversations start feeling distant. And it feels like this invisible wall slowly appears between you and them. And if you've ever experienced this from someone, it messes with your head. Because one moment, they make you feel deeply loved. And the next moment, it feels like they're emotionally disappearing right in front of you. So naturally, you start asking yourself questions. Did I become too much? Did they stop loving me? Did I do something wrong? But what if the real problem started long before you ever entered their life? Because some people don't avoid intimacy because they don't care. Sometimes they avoid intimacy because somewhere deep in their nervous system, closeness feels dangerous. And the terrifying part is, many avoidant people don't even realize they're doing it. They think they're protecting their independence, when in reality, they may have spent their entire life emotionally running from vulnerability without even realizing it. And honestly, I think avoidant attachment might be one of the loneliest psychological patterns a person can live with. Because imagine craving love like everyone else, while your nervous system treats emotional closeness like a threat. That's the contradiction we're talking about today. And once you truly understand where avoidant attachment comes from, you stop seeing emotionally distant people as cold and start realizing many of them are actually emotionally overwhelmed. Here's what makes avoidant attachment so confusing. Avoidant people are not always emotionless. In fact, many of them feel emotions very deeply. That's why this attachment style is so misunderstood. People imagine avoidant individuals as heartless villains who don't care about anyone. But most of the time, that's not what's happening internally. A lot of avoidant people genuinely want connection. They want love. They want closeness. They want relationships. But when intimacy finally arrives, something inside them starts sounding alarms. This is too much. I need space. I'm losing myself. I feel trapped. And the strange part is, their conscious mind may not even understand why they suddenly feel overwhelmed. Because avoidant attachment usually operates beneath awareness. It's not a logical decision, it's a survival response. And to understand why that happens, we have to go backwards. Way backwards. Children are naturally emotional. They cry when they feel unsafe. They seek comfort when they're afraid. They want reassurance when something hurts. That's normal. Human beings are literally wired for emotional connection. But now imagine a child repeatedly learning something painful. Every time they express emotions, they get ignored, criticized, rejected, dismissed, punished. Stop crying. You're too sensitive. Handle it yourself. Or maybe nobody says anything at all. And honestly, sometimes silence wounds children even deeper than words. Because eventually, the child starts noticing a pattern. Vulnerability doesn't create connection. It creates discomfort, embarrassment, rejection, disappointment. So the brain adapts. And this is where everything changes. Because the child slowly stops reaching emotionally. Not because they stopped having needs, but because expressing those needs stopped feeling safe. And once the brain discovers emotional suppression reduces pain, it starts turning emotional distance into protection. That's the beginning of avoidant attachment, not coldness, protection. And here's where this gets darker. The brain rewards emotional suppression. Think about that. The child realizes, when I stop expressing emotions, I avoid rejection. When I stop needing people, I stop getting disappointed. When I emotionally handle things alone, I stay safer. So over time, emotional independence stops being a personality trait and starts becoming survival mode. That's why many avoidant people grow into adults who seem calm, logical, independent, emotionally controlled, and society praises them for it. They're strong. They don't need anyone. They're emotionally mature. But sometimes what looks like strength externally is actually emotional self-protection internally. Because suppressing emotions is not the same thing as healing them. Buried emotions don't disappear, they wait. They show up later as emotional withdrawal, loneliness, anxiety, numbness, relationship problems, and exhaustion people can't even explain. And this creates one of the most painful contradictions inside avoidant people. They want connection, but connection activates fear. They want intimacy, but intimacy makes them uncomfortable. They care deeply about people, but emotional closeness feels overwhelming. It's like emotionally pressing the gas pedal and the brake at the exact same time. And this is usually the moment the relationship quietly starts changing. Not through one massive argument, not through some dramatic betrayal, just small emotional shifts that slowly become impossible to ignore. The good morning texts become shorter. The late night conversations slowly disappear. The affection that once felt effortless suddenly starts feeling inconsistent. And honestly, that inconsistency is what emotionally destabilizes people the most, because the human brain can handle rejection faster than confusion. At least rejection is clear, but emotional unpredictability, that keeps people psychologically stuck, because now the other person starts wondering, did I do something wrong? Are they losing feelings? Am I becoming too much? Meanwhile, the avoidant person is usually having an entirely different internal experience. And this is where things become tragically misunderstood. Because from the outside, it can look like they're losing interest. But internally, many avoidant people are actually experiencing emotional overwhelm. Not because the relationship is unhealthy, but because emotional closeness itself has started activating subconscious fear. And the terrifying part, most avoidant people don't consciously realize this is happening yet. They just suddenly feel emotionally exhausted. Someone says, I miss you, and instead of only feeling warmth, they also feel pressure. Someone asks, are we okay? And their nervous system reacts like they're being emotionally cornered. So without fully understanding why, they start creating distance, not loudly, subtly. They reply slower. They become harder to read. They spend more time alone. They suddenly need space they can't fully explain. And honestly, this is one of the strangest parts of avoidant attachment. Many avoidant people can genuinely love someone while simultaneously feeling an overwhelming urge to escape the emotional intensity of being loved. That contradiction confuses everyone involved, including them. Because one week they're imagining a future with someone, and the next week they suddenly feel this irrational urge to disappear emotionally and live alone in a cabin somewhere. And as dramatic as that sounds, that emotional whiplash is very real. Because avoidant attachment often creates a deep subconscious fear of emotional engulfment. The fear that closeness will eventually consume their freedom, overwhelm their identity, trap them emotionally, or make them dependent in ways that later become painful. And this fear usually has very little to do with the current relationship itself. That's important, because many avoidant people are not reacting to the present moment. They're reacting to emotional conditioning from years ago. Old emotional survival patterns are quietly entering new relationships. And this is where the cycle becomes heartbreaking. Because the more emotionally connected the relationship becomes, the more the avoidant nervous system starts scanning for danger. Tiny things suddenly feel emotionally loaded. A simple conversation about feelings starts feeling exhausting. A request for reassurance feels emotionally overwhelming. A healthy amount of intimacy suddenly feels suffocating. And eventually, something strange starts happening. The avoidant person begins emotionally focusing on flaws, not necessarily because the flaws are serious, but because the brain is unconsciously searching for emotional distance. So suddenly, small incompatibilities feel huge. Tiny disagreements feel emotionally heavy. Minor imperfections become impossible to ignore. And this is why some avoidant people suddenly lose attraction the moment relationships become serious. Not because love disappeared, but because intimacy activated fear. And honestly, I think this is one of the saddest psychological traps in avoidant attachment. The person is desperately trying to protect themselves from emotional pain while unintentionally blocking themselves from the exact closeness they actually crave underneath. It's like dying of thirst, while instinctively pulling away from water. The worst part, many avoidant people don't realize how lonely this becomes until much later, because emotional avoidance feels empowering in the beginning. It feels like control, independence, freedom. But over time, the emotional distance that once felt protective slowly starts turning into isolation. And eventually they find themselves surrounded by relationships, conversations, routines, distractions, but still emotionally disconnected underneath all of it. Because humans can suppress attachment needs, but they can't fully erase them. And eventually the emotional numbness starts becoming impossible to ignore. Because emotional avoidance stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like isolation with better marketing. And honestly, this is the part where avoidant attachment quietly destroys relationships. Not always through screaming, not always through cheating, not always through obvious toxicity. Sometimes relationships die through emotional starvation, slowly, quietly, over time. One person keeps trying to emotionally connect, the other keeps emotionally retreating, and eventually both people become exhausted. The anxious partner starts thinking, why does loving me feel so difficult for them? While the avoidant partner secretly thinks, why does closeness suddenly feel suffocating? And the tragedy is, both people usually misunderstand each other completely. The anxious partner sees coldness. The avoidant partner feels emotional overwhelm. The avoidant partner sees emotional pressure. The anxious partner feels fear of abandonment. Underneath both reactions are unhealed emotional wounds. But here's the deeper realization many avoidant people eventually face. The emotional walls protecting them from pain are also blocking love, blocking trust, blocking intimacy, blocking emotional safety. Because when you spend years protecting yourself from vulnerability, you unintentionally protect yourself from connection too. And maybe that's the saddest part of all this. Many avoidant people genuinely want closeness, but their nervous system learned long ago that closeness leads to danger. So they spend years emotionally preparing for abandonment before abandonment even happens. And eventually, self-protection becomes self-sabotage. That's the hidden cost of avoidance. It protects you from pain, but it can also quietly prevent you from experiencing the depth of connection you actually crave underneath. And healing avoidant attachment does not mean suddenly becoming emotionally perfect overnight. It doesn't mean becoming hyper-vulnerable instantly. It doesn't mean losing your independence. It means slowly teaching your nervous system something it never fully learnt before. That intimacy is not automatically danger. That vulnerability is survivable. That depending on someone is not weakness. That emotional closeness does not mean losing yourself, because real emotional strength is not pretending you need nobody. Real emotional strength is being able to stay emotionally present even when closeness feels uncomfortable. And honestly, I think this is where healing truly begins. The moment someone stops asking, how do I avoid getting hurt? And starts asking, how do I finally allow myself to connect safely without running away from it? Because some relationships don't fail because love disappears. Sometimes they fail because fear becomes stronger than vulnerability. One person fears abandonment, the other fears emotional engulfment, and both people end up emotionally protecting themselves from each other. But protection is not the same thing as peace. And eventually, emotional avoidance stops feeling safe and starts feeling empty. Because humans were never designed to survive emotionally disconnected forever. We are wired for attachment, for closeness, for emotional safety. And maybe the real healing journey for avoidant attachment is realizing that vulnerability was never the enemy. The fear surrounding it was. And once someone slowly learns that closeness does not automatically end in pain, something inside them finally stops running. Not because fear completely disappears, but because for the first time, connection no longer feels like danger.